Link's Awakening has one of the sparsest yet most impactful stories in all of video games. But its secret ending, only seen if you've completed the game without dying, has been the subject of many interpretations. I'd like to go over several of the more prominent interpretations, provide evidence for and against them, and relate each one back to the overall themes of the game to see which interpretation fits most compellingly into the larger narrative. Thanks for joining me on this harrowing voyage. Subscribe to the channel, and let's lay some groundwork. First, we have a minor complication in that there are 3 versions of Link's Awakening, and thus multiple secret endings. The original for Game Boy, where the ending has Marin with a pair of wings flying across the screen, and DX for the Game Boy Color and remake for the Switch, both versions of which show a vision of Marin in the clouds that fades as a seagull flies past. The remake's secret endings definitely add more depth to the narrative, but we'll get to that shortly. These cutscenes, of course, are a reference to another cutscene early in the game where Link and Marin are sitting on a log on the beach. Here, Marin muses on what exists beyond the sea. Perhaps compelled by the setting, she says, "If I was a seagull, I would fly as far as I could. I would fly to faraway places and sing for many people. If I wish to the windfish, I wonder if my dream will come true." Throughout the game, many of these little moments humanize Marin, endearing us to her character, so that ultimately, when Koholint is revealed to be a dream perpetuated by the demon nightmares that Link must defeat to wake the windfish, vaporizing the illusory island and all its inhabitants in the process, our little island girl Marin included, the moment is devastating for us. The secret ending, then, is meant to give us some closure. But what exactly that closure is depends on one of several interpretations. The first interpretation is that Marin, like Link, is a real person who is also captured in the windfish's dream. I've detailed the in-game evidence for this elsewhere, but would also like to include additional evidence outside of Link's Awakening. Specifically, the idea that Malon and Talon from this game's successor, Ocarina of Time, which in the timeline happens prior to Link's Awakening, are reincarnated and trapped on Koholint as Marin and Terran. To push back on that idea, Malon and Talon were designed after Marin and Terran, who were designed after Zelda and Mario, respectively. So it's difficult to include them as evidence for the original intent of the secret ending to point towards living in-game people when they didn't yet exist. Not to mention the now long-standing tradition of reusing characters in Zelda games is more geared towards archetypes or representations, rather than characters as literal reincarnations of the same people. Additionally, this also opens the floodgates for scrutinizing the realness of any other characters caught in the dream. But there is simply not enough evidence to make that determination for each of them one way or the other. To push back on my own older theory, the island seems to treat Link much differently than any other inhabitant, even Marin, who is deeply ingrained with the island's other inhabitants. The owl, part of the windfish's spirit, immediately sets Link on a path to wake the windfish. Even the nightmares refer to Link as the outsider. The owl also describes the nightmares as acting violently when Link first appears, a hint that they believe someone could upend their plan. Perhaps they don't think Marin's a threat because she actually can't defeat the nightmares, even with her knowledge of the Ballad of the Windfish. Regardless, as the island dissolves, we see it and its inhabitants disappearing, Marin included. The second interpretation is that Marin was, or by divine decree of the windfish in fulfillment of her wish, becomes a seagull. Similar to the first interpretation, this posits that Marin was, or still is, a seagull prior to entering the windfish's dream, and this explains both her desire to become a seagull and the flying seagull in the secret ending. However, the one character we know for sure entered the windfish's dream is Link, and he appears unchanged in the dream compared to his waking form. There are also many animals on the island, even a whole village of talking animals called Animal Village. It's also not absurd for humans on Koholint to change into animals, specifically Terran, who is cursed by a sleepy toadstool. It seems strange then that Marin would enter the dream as a seagull and have her form changed into a human, especially if the island already contains seagulls. What perhaps has more validity is the idea that Marin is turned into a seagull by the windfish once it is awakened. Though in the original secret ending, she is clearly not a seagull, but a girl who got her wings, as it were. Less horrible of an amalgam than the family in the House of Skulltula, and clearly not as integrated as a species like the Rito. Though weirdly, as she flies past, she does make seagull noises. The remakes show Marin's image disappearing in the sky, giving way to a seagull, which could imply that the seagull is Marin, and that her wish was granted by the windfish. However, if we go back and look at this scene, Marin's wish isn't really to become a seagull, it's to go to faraway places and sing to many people, to see what's beyond the edges of the island. She mentions being a seagull because they are creatures that can clearly leave the island, if only a little. Plus, a seagull song is not something I'd imagine people wanting to listen to. Also, weirdly, when Marin returns to Mabe village after Link saves her from the Tall mountain range, she talks about making a wish to the windfish, but then says it's a secret. Why would it be a secret if she already told Link what the wish was earlier in the game? Does she wish for something else? Lastly is the interpretation that Marin is simply a creation of the windfish's dream, but plays a role akin to the owl as a representation of the windfish's desire to wake up. It's why Marin knows the Ballad of the Windfish, a song of awakening, and her desire to leave the island, a metaphor for the windfish ending the dream. This could also explain the seagull imagery, as both the owl and seagull would be aspects of the windfish in the literal and symbolic form of birds. However, the owl and Marin feel distinct, with the owl shocked that Marin might try to wake the windfish, something he's been guiding Link to do the entire game. Also, when Link learns the truth about the island, the art on the wall depicts the windfish and the owl, and not any other characters. This art also hints at Marin merely being part of the dream, saying, "To the finder, the Isle of Koholint is but an illusion. Human monster, sea, sky. A scene on the lid of the sleeper's eye. Awake the dreamer and Koholint will vanish much like a bubble on a needle. Castaway, you should know the truth." Interestingly, the owl after this says, while it does say the island is but a dream of the windfish, no one is really sure. Although, by the game's end, this is clear. What's more interesting is the end of this quote. So you cannot tell if this is a dream until you awaken. The only one who knows for sure is the windfish. Trust your feelings. Someday, you will discover the answer. We'll get back to this later. One of the nightmares indirectly refers to Marin being part of the dream in an attempt to dissuade Link from waking the windfish, saying, "Okay, listen up. If the windfish wakes up, everything on this island will be gone forever. And I do mean everything." Though a different nightmare is unsure if Link is even real. "My energy, gone. I lost. But you will be lost too, if the windfish wakes. Same as me, you are in his dream." So it's difficult to rely on the nightmares to determine what is actually real within the dream. Whether Marin is a part of the windfish's dream as its spirit, like the owl, or simply a less significant dream creation, which seems clear near the game's end, both secret endings would point to a more symbolic interpretation, that Marin will live on in Link's memory even though the windfish is awake and Koholint gone. Regardless of which interpretation you may subscribe to, what should also be considered is how each deepens our understanding of the story Link's Awakening is trying to tell. The story reflects on the many aspects of dreams and memory. Not only literal dreams like the sleeping windfishes, or dreams within dreams, the dream shrine, the sleeping walrus, but also figurative dreams like Marin's dream of leaving the island to sing to many people, a trait that makes her feel more real. And memories of people you met, the emotions they stirred within you, and holding on to the memory of that person even if they may no longer be around. The dream shrine to me is a good encapsulation of this, that Link can sleep, dream, and return with something tangible, an ocarina, an instrument of music which, like a dream, can well within us something beyond words. Not to be lost in this is the windfish's statement that, "Verily, it be the nature of dreams to end." But also not to be lost is perhaps the core theme of Link's Awakening, as the windfish says, "Someday thou may recall this island." That memory makes the dream world real. As such, the first two interpretations, that Marin is real either as a human or a seagull, rely more on literal explanations for the secret ending. That Marin survives and lives the life she dreams, and perhaps tinged with wishful thinking, finds Link again. I find these interpretations less convincing. I tend to subscribe to the fact that Marin was just another part of the dream, and with the realm of dreams being symbolic, that the secret endings are in fact metaphorical. In keeping with the theme of memory throughout the game, Marin tells Link not to forget her, even when she knows he will leave. Keeping her in his memory, therefore, keeps her alive, just as the Windfish says. The image of Marin in the sky is a hint not that the dream was literally real, but that Link could take from the dream something tangible, the emotions he felt while with Marin on the island, and the Ballad of the Windfish, a deeply evocative song in just a few notes, one he can take with him to whatever lands he may find next, creating deep emotion in others. Further symbolism is the seagull that then appears, as the seagull is not only a symbol of freedom, both of Link's from the dream and Marin's out into the world carried by Link, but in Japanese folklore said to either contain the souls of lost sailors or to guide them, of which Link currently is such a lost sailor. Seagulls also fly close to land, meaning all hope is not lost for Link. I think this is the best interpretation because it also is symbolic of our experience of the game itself. I mentioned how impactful the story of Link's Awakening is, that it makes us feel real emotions. But why? What is it about a digital game filled with fake characters that make us feel something so real and can alter how we navigate our actual lives? In that sense, it affirms the themes of Link's Awakening, that our memory of an experience, literally real or not, and the emotions that memory stirs are what truly keeps us alive. Thanks for watching.